What's up, folks? This is Grandison Shines here with Seduire International, and I am here with two of my favorite coaches. This time, I'm going to mix it up. I'm going to go with the gentleman first.
What?
We have over here. Yes, that's right.
Al Gleason, the curator of nonsense. What's up?
Al Gleason, the curator of nonsense. Over here we have
Yasmin Murray.
Yasmin Murray.
With Seduire International.
Seduire International. Do you have a special title or anything?
I was thinking about that.
All right. Well, we'll come back to that.
Come back to it.
Today, we are going to be talking about a very sensitive subject, something that we all have to do, whether you are a parent in that ecosystem or if you're a leader in the ecosystem at the workplace environment. It is called conflict resolution. Ooh. As long as you are dealing with people, as long as you have relationships, you are going to have to manage conflict. And we have a certain way in which it can and should be done so that everyone profits and benefits from the process. We're going to go through that, the process of resolving and getting back into collaboration at the end of the day.
Yes.
We have all had our experiences, and I'm going to start with Yasmin Murray. Can you relate to an experience that either recently happened or one in the past that still stands at the forefront of your mind?
My life is full of conflicts.
Full of conflict, all right.
You know, every
Warrior
day.
princess over there.
I know, every day we deal with some kind of conflict, either if it's at work or at home.
Sure.
But what is conflict? The definition of conflict is two or three people, or majority, or maybe none, but people who...
Internal conflict.
Well, would you let me finish? Conflict is when two people or three people don't agree on a certain point of view. What happens? They start to argue. And sometimes argument can escalate to the point where somebody else has to intervene.
Yes, absolutely.
And that intervention has to happen from a leader's perspective, or a leader or a parent, if it's at home.
Right.
So to me, I mean, we've dealt with conflict resolution for a long, long time. I know personally I have.
Sure, absolutely. We have to come in as the mediator. It is your job, leaders, to come in as the mediator to make sure that we have a smooth transition to collaboration. Al, what about you in conflict resolution?
Oh yeah, well, I have kids. So it is pretty much a daily thing,
Yes,
but also in the workplace as well.
Right.
You know, I can think back one moment that stands out to me was when I had my first real job. You know, got my degree and I'm working in corporate, and I had a manager who was always getting on me for not doing a great job. But then toward the end of my time there, I talked to a senior level manager and realized that he was taking my ideas. So I would come to him with stuff and he would, you know, in my face, like, oh, that's terrible, you know, just do what I told you to do. And then in these meetings, he was taking my ideas and using them.
Wow.
That's terrible.
And so, yeah, it was terrible. So I think about it because I say it's conflict resolution because it was always this type of situation with him. Sure. And the result of that was me leaving. That was the resolution at the time.
And it happens to be that way sometimes.
Yes.
We remove ourselves from the situation, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Before we get into the process, there are a few other communication techniques that come into mind, especially you as a leader coming into play. So we're going to talk about some of those. There are a myriad of them. And again, we're going to talk about some of them. I'm going to mention one first. One is, I strongly suggest you come in with we call the inclusive language technique, or exclusive speech technique, meaning that you're going to talk in terms of we, let's, us, our, that kind of opportunity to have a team focus, a collaborative focus. That's going to be very, very important because you don't want to isolate the person or isolate the people. And this is going to be extremely important especially if you have one of the people you favor more than the other. There's sometimes we just have maybe a favorite on our team or somebody that we have more affinity towards, and we have to come in with a very objective outlook and make sure that we talk to both of them. And when we're talking to them, utilizing this inclusive speech technique is going to be so much more gratifying for the team members. Remember, we don't want to make sure, if you can see my hands, for those of you who are watching this, listening to the video, what I'm doing is separating my hands further and further apart. That's not what we want. We want collaboration. We want the team to work together in harmony and synchronicity. And there's some unity there that we want to happen. So we're going to utilize the inclusive language technique. Yasmin, throw another skill out there for us that should be included.
Communication is number one.
Absolutely, communication.
Have to communicate.
Sure thing.
Then we have emotional intelligence.
Okay. All right. Emotional intelligence.
Negotiating skills.
All right. Good. Al, what other skill sets come into play?
Well, I think I like you. You took my
Yasmin
favorites.
all of them.
Oh my
Yes,
goodness.
Exactly. She was like, I said, Yasmin, give me one. And she named three of them.
She
right there.
ran
Boom,
off
boom, boom.
all the ones we talked about before we started recording.
Hey, stress management too. We have stress management.
So thank
and
you.
empathy.
Just take the last
Take the
one.
last-
Just take the last one we talked about. So I'm on the spot here,
Yes.
everybody.
Yes, yes, yes.
Well,
You said, whatever
I want
she's saying.
to-
Whatever she's saying.
I want to say, I'm gonna say as far as communication, that it has to be effective communication.
Absolutely, yes.
There's a lot of people hear communication, they have the idea of that, but it's not effective.
Sure.
And particularly, listening.
Listening.
You cannot be thinking about what you want to say to prove your point or to prove that you're right,
Sure.
and not listen to what the other party has to say.
Yep.
And this is people in conflict as well as you as the leader that's coming in as the mediator. Especially as you mentioned, if you have favorites.
Yeah.
If somebody has a history of being a great employee or worker, and so you kind of lean to their side over the other person,
Right.
you can't let that bias, it's not the best thing to let that bias
Sure.
influence the conflict or your view of the conflict, and then which would effectively influence the way you try to mitigate it.
Sure,
So
sure.
you need to be objective, have objectivity, have awareness of your own biases. I think is a part of that, maybe to articulate that better.
Sure.
And make sure that there's effective communication in that you're listening, that you are looking at others' perspectives, so you
Yes.
can make the best decision possible.
Right. And the leader has that really particular position as the mediator in taking information on both sides. We'll be talking about that when we get clarification into that part of the process. But making sure that we listen, active listening is going to be the opportunity for us leaders.
Yes.
And as I was saying, to come in as neutral as possible, and making sure that there is no bias, even conceived or perceived bias on any side. Extremely, extremely important, because we don't want to, again, that's how we will isolate people, and we don't want to isolate them. We want to include them and make sure we come to a happy time so everybody can go back to a happy place in their workplace environment.
Yes.
What else you want to add, Yasmin?
What I want to add is, what happens if the conflict is with your boss?
Same thing.
Who's going to be the mediator?
Well, that's when the boss should. Well, actually, let me ask you this. Well, I'll answer this first. I was going to turn back on. The leader should, and has to really come from a place of objectivity then. Really has to really position themselves there. If it doesn't get to that place and the leader can't do that, the affiliate can do that, he'll be honest with themselves, they have to operate in integrity. Then that's when you go to HR or some other mediator in order to, or a superior, you have to go to HR right away, but go to a superior and have them mediate the opportunity there. What do you say?
No, I agree, but sometimes it comes to the point, like Al said, somebody has to remove themselves from that situation of conflict if there is no resolution. So don't think that there's always an answer, that there's always a resolution, but reality is there are times that there is no resolution and somebody has to remove themselves from that particular situation.
So to answer your own question, if the boss and the subordinate, or superiors and subordinate are having that conflict, what do you suggest they do if they can't come to?
Go to HR, but most, I'm telling you from experience, 9 out of 10 times, HR will always lean towards the boss. It's happened to me personally,
Yes.
and the situation, whatever the situation was, ended up that I had to leave as well, just like you.
Right.
That you know that you're in a position that there is no winning.
Well, I would like to reframe that a little bit. So sometimes there's always a resolution, but sometimes the
Yeah.
resolution is removing yourself from the situation. Okay, so,
Yeah.
but in that scenario, well, I'll say in my scenario, there was an opportunity once everything came out that I could have gone to a higher level manager and dealt with it. And it was actually communicated to me that that was an option.
Right.
I was young in my career and I didn't understand that that was an option. You know, now if I was in that situation and things were happening, I would have gone to that next level and handled it that way. So that is a way to do it. Also, when you have that, you know, if it's a superior, you can find one of their peers if that's possible, you know, or even just having a third party, you know, but getting some type of third party involved is a way to maintain some objectivity or get a different perspective so that you can have you know, as much objectivity as possible in resolving that situation. But yeah, sometimes the resolution is simply just to remove yourself.
Right.
In our program, folks, we talk about emotional intelligence first. Understanding what that is, understanding what the 6 stages are, understanding what the 5 social settings are, the social opportunities are. And then we get into killing or killing self-defeating thoughts. Then we get into what we're talking about now, conflict resolution. When a leader comes into play, and or the people who have the conflict, is going to be, I believe, and I know, it's going to be a much easier resolution if you can come to the opportunity from an empathetic standpoint. An empathetic standpoint. Also knowing, of course, what your triggers are in that situation and understanding how to utilize the triggers, so we'll talk about that in a second, to come to a resolution so that it doesn't happen again. Or if it doesn't happen again, we can control it more. But understanding yourself first in terms of emotional intelligence, and then understand it from the other person's perspective as well for the emotional intelligence. So emotional intelligence is very, very heightened. It's going to be there. It's going to be a very escalated situation. So now what we're going to do is talk about the process. There's a 6-step process. And again, we break it down like this because understanding it first, we realize in our program, give you a complete understanding first, and then your brains, as you start to look over this and practice it in your organization, your brain starts to pick it up faster. And those points that we talk about, those salient points, the points that we're going to talk about right now, these 6 points in conflict resolution will come to mind right when you need them. But you got to practice it. You'll have an opportunity. And if you don't have an opportunity at work, if you have kids, you will definitely have an opportunity.
Absolutely.
All the time. Because I have 5 girls, and there were times when they would just go at it. Now they're pretty much best friends, but they still go at it every once in a while. The 10-year-old loves picking on the 19-year-old and having that going. Having that, ooh, that's a whole different opportunity there. Yes. All right, let's talk about the process. Okay. First of all, Al, point number 1, we have to have observation. We have to observe what happens. Talk to us about that opportunity.
Yeah, so observation, and that's part of what I alluded to earlier, is getting as much information as possible related to the situation. Getting each party's perspective, having an understanding of the context. You mentioned knowing yourself, knowing what your perspective is, so that you can be as objective as possible. And I think if you don't take that time to do that, it's quite possible that you can make an error, a judgment that's an error. You know, not the best judgment for the situation.
All right, that's me.
Observation. Oh, we're still talking about observation.
Observation, yes.
Yeah, observation, like Al said, and listening to both sides of the story, getting as much information as you can, because without information, you can't make a decision.
Okay, I'm going to talk about observation from a different standpoint. I'm going to talk about it, for instance, you are looking out into the bullpen. Well, I remember in my corporate days in my office, I could see my area, my people, where they are. And I had an office, and I had the glass pane there, and actually the glass front. Actually, half of the wall was glass, and then half of it was the stucco. Then I had the little small pane, then there was a door, of course. So I could see my people outside. And I saw 2 of my employees one time. They were talking, and I could see that their gestures, their hand gestures were, and I couldn't hear them, but their hand gestures were pretty extensive and above the shoulders and whatnot. So I had to utilize the skills of contextualization. I contextualized that there was some conflict. I contextualized that even though I couldn't hear them, I saw them and said, okay, let me go out there and see what's going on. So that was my opportunity for observation. So I went out there, and then I went into the next point number 2, which is de-escalation. I got clear. I definitely heard that there was, I contextualized first, then I heard the conflict, and then I went into point number 2, which is de-escalation. Yasmin, talk to us about de-escalation.
Well, de-escalation, you have to, like you said, you have to separate them first so they don't go fist to fist.
All right. Fist to cuffs, yes.
And what's worked for me in the past is that listen to both sides of the story individually.
Right. Okay.
Because if they're both there, they're both screaming, no one's listening, they both want their voice to be heard. So the best thing to do is, hey, calm down, go take a walk, you go drink a cold glass of water, and so come to my office, let's talk about this. Individually get their stories, de-escalate, move them apart.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, absolutely. If it has gotten to that level of escalation, I definitely agree with taking a pause. You know, it's one of my favorite things. Take a pause, Take a break.
Right.
If there's a situation, most times my experience has been it doesn't get to that point where it's about to be a battle physically or something like that. So, but the process I feel is still the same. So you do have to hear both sides, ask the question, what's going on. If it hasn't escalated to that highest level, I think it's important to deal with it right there, if at all possible. And part of you talked about the context. You know, it may be asking somebody that was a third-party witness or something. Get something so you understand what's going on, but then deal with it immediately.
Sure. Both opportunities are very much so apropos. Yeah. And I remember very vividly going out to the bullpen area and say, hey, what's going on? Hey, hold on, let's talk about this. Hold on, calm down. Can we talk about this like adults? Can we rationalize the situation? Can we talk logically? Okay. Yes. And that's where the de-escalation started. I just interjected. There's not a time to watch and observe and be like, oh, okay, let them go at it. No, we want to go right into it and lean right into the opportunity and disrupt what's going on.
Yes.
Hey, hold on, wait a minute, wait, let's get a little too escalated. We need to go talk about this, so we should go talk about this somewhere else. And again, utilizing the inclusive speech technique and making sure we talk about we, let's, us. Hey, this is not the place for us to do this right now. Hey, let's go over here and have a little talk. Let's all calm down. Let's go to the office right quick. And that's the way you want that conversation to go.
Yes, that was something you said was really important. Don't necessarily, I said handle it immediately, but don't necessarily do it in front of everybody else.
Yes.
That's usually not a good situation.
Yes, exactly.
And then also remaining calm. It is important that you don't get to a heightened level. If they're screaming, you can't come in there screaming with them, because that typically will maintain that level of escalation or take it to a higher level.
Yes.
So you got to remain calm as well.
I'm actually guilty of that also, what he just said, especially with my kids. One time they were arguing about something. I came in, I was like, and something happened. It triggered something to me. I was like, hey, what are y'all doing here? And I realized, I was like, oh, hold on. There's communication here. All right, hold on. Let's talk about this. Yeah. But there are also times when, in teaching moments with my girls, and this will relate also to what we're going to talk about, the clarification part or the professional part, I would say, hey, you guys have 1 minute to get to a resolution. Once we talk about resolution, I want to put the cart before the horse. So then we move them over to another area. Hey, and now me as a leader, now it's time to get point number 3, clarification. Hey, what's going on? Hey, let's talk about this for right now. Hey, Yasmin, what's going on? What happened? Hey, Al, what happened? And it's important for the leader to get both sides of the story. And again, both of them are right in their own mind. They perceive it 2 different ways, and that's why they're having this argument. So me as the neutral person, the mediator, hey, what's going on, Yasmin? And while she's talking, I'm making all sorts of assessments and judgments. Same thing with Al. My brain's talking, right? That's my computer language.
That's how your brain sounds on the inside.
It's inside my head. And I'm assessing. I'm gathering information. I'm storing it. I'm rephrasing it. I'm reframing it. I'm thinking about it. At the same time, I still have to actively listen. This is where that multitasking opportunity comes in for leaders, for parents. You have to multitask and have that other program running on in the background, just like we do when we talk about filler words. If you go through our program, filler words and low power phrases. Yasmin, talk to us about clarification.
9 out of 10 times it's miscommunication, or somebody misconstrued what the other person said.
Okay, all right.
That's been my experience.
Sure.
But at the same time, I should not be generalizing. Well, Al always does that, Grandison. He always comes at me from a negative point of view. He always does that.
Using those absolutes.
Absolutes.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
That's, yes. And how often have we said that in our own communication with other people? We try to be aware of that, but there are times when we use that. You always do that. You always say that. There's always, never, and you never do this. Those sorts of, we want to stay away from that kind of language for sure.
Yes.
Talk about clarification.
Well, and I think it's important when you talk about the always and never. That's typically a lie. It's never always, and it's never never. So for you to say that, you never land. Exactly. You can't come to a point of resolution when it's built on that lie.
Absolutely.
So you do have to get down to the bottom of it. You do need to address that if somebody says that.
Sure.
There was this famous, still a famous minister that I listen to a lot. I won't say his name, but he would always say, if you stop always doing, then the other person will stop never doing. And I think it is so profound.
Right. I got
when
that.
you're talking about conflict resolution, because if that's your mentality, then you'll never get to the end of
Sure.
it. The other part of that is, if you are blaming somebody for never doing, if you always do it, they don't have an opportunity. So sometimes in those conflicts, it's based on one individual's actions. If you always do it because they move too slow, well, you can't get upset that they don't ever do it. Sure. You let them do it in their time frame. Right. So a lot of times the conflict comes down to, we mentioned miscommunication, but it could be certain types of behaviors that, one person's not even wrong, it's just their perception. Right. So when you get clarity, you got to understand, and that's part of that context and some of the other things that we said.
And also something you said, that sometimes people have the same behaviors, but something triggered that day that escalated it or made it unbearable.
Yes.
Like, you could be clicking your nails all the time and it doesn't bother me, but today I'm in a bad mood, and no matter what you say, it's going to trigger this conflict.
Right.
You should be more emotionally intelligent. Like I said. Awesome. Resolution. Now we come to a place. Now we got clarification, and we have this opportunity to now come to the resolution piece, which is point number 4. Two schools of thought there with resolution. One, and I'll go first. One of train of thought is talk them through to the resolution. Talk them through to getting a resolution, meaning that you're going to allow them to come up with the resolution. If they can't come up with the resolution, then you as the leader, then is your opportunity, your job, your responsibility to help them come up with an opportunity for the resolution, what those resolution points may be or should be. And you can jot out one and be more autocratic about it, more authoritarian about it, I should say, or you can come up with 3 different ones and have them choose which one. It depends on how you want to coach them into the resolution. Some people feel, just give them a resolution. Well, not all the time. I believe there are times it's more powerful, and they're going to get more agreement, which we'll talk about later on, the next point of making sure if they come up with it, then they have the opportunity to facilitate that going forward. I'll start with you on agreement.
I agree with that. I typically like for people to come to their own resolution, whether you let them do it on their own or you are still a mediator in that process. Sure. One of the big things is there is a level of buy-in if the individuals come to the resolution.
Sure.
You came up with this idea. This is what you said you could do. And so they feel a level of accountability when it's that, versus if as a leader I come in and say, this is what we're going to do. Well, they may or may not agree with that or buy in. And if they can't come to a resolution, obviously you have to force something. You have to get to that point. But I think if you go through the process, people are thoughtful, they get an opportunity to realize what they're doing or what they're not doing. Right. And then it seems to be a better long-term solution if they come to the resolution.
Absolutely, I like that. What do you think?
I agree. Also ask them open-ended questions. That we have a process with that too, leading them to the resolution that you desire.
Sure, yeah. Giving that guidance. That's where the leader comes in as that really strong, wise, sagacious, savvy person for one of our modalities, how we execute the technique, 6 tracks execution.
Yes.
Those who are in our program, you should know that.
Yes.
Absolutely. But yes, I like what she said there, making sure that we guide them to a solution, the resolution that we actually want. That's when you're taking your leadership standpoint to a very savvy position.
Yes.
And that's where those teaching moments become so strong they come such of a learning opportunity that we come to our next point, which is number 5, which is agreement. Now we want agreement, and we want them to make sure, and we want to clarify the agreement. Agreement is extremely important. Yasmin, I'll start with you first. What do you think about agreement?
Like I said in my previous statement, mention it in a way that it seems to be their idea, the resolution is their idea. For instance, I can say, don't you think, Grandison, if we did it this way, it will work out better? I'm leading you to the answer,
Sure.
and you're automatically going to say yes because you can't come up with a resolution, but this is your idea. I'm making you believe it's your idea.
So what if I don't come to an agreement? What if you mention that and I don't agree?
Then I'll say, what do you think?
Yeah, put it back on them. Make them come right back up with an answer. Well, I don't agree with you said. Well, I'm thinking, okay, if you don't agree with what I said, okay, well, you come up with something.
Yeah,
Right back to
exactly.
square one. You come up with a resolution. What do you think?
Yeah, I like that, and that goes back into having that buy-in if they come up with a resolution.
Exactly.
So that's important. No, I think ultimately being that guide and helping them resolve it themselves, even if you do have a desired outcome that you have in your mind, asking the questions, lead them down that path. But then if not, it's definitely their idea.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
And it's, again, a better long-term solution.
Sure. One of the aspects I like with agreement is that I like to I like to give them the opportunity to repeat, clarify what the resolution is, and that they do have agreement. Hey, this is how we're going to do this next time if it comes up again. We agree that we are going to move forward this way, and if it comes up again, we are going to institute this. We're not going to have this conflict. Such power in getting them to agree with that. And then to strengthen that agreement, we go into, we're in the modality right now of 5 senses of the body. They're hearing each other, they're looking at each other, making eye contact. Then the one thing that seals it off, the one thing that a lot of businesses used to be predicated on before we start getting into a very litigious society was the handshake. You get them to agree, to shake hands, to touch. I used to have my girls, give each other a hug, but if you get them to touch each other, that solidifies that agreement. Now their word is on the line here for the next go around. That's right. You want to bond it, you want to solidify it. If they can come to agreement, shaking hands, giving a high five, whatever, you know what, slap on the back, whatever else, that's going to solidify that agreement. That's going to make that resolution so much more, which goes into number 6. Now we have collaboration. Now we're back to working together, utilizing everything that we spoke about, utilizing the inclusive language technique, having that collaboration going forward. We are still a team, and we can do this. We are going to do this, and we're going to prosper in doing this. We're going to make this great for our department and the company. Collaboration moving forward is so strengthening. Yasmin, what do you have to say about collaboration?
I look at conflict also as an opportunity for growth. Whenever there's conflict, that means 2 people are thinking, they have their own way of thinking, and they might have different solutions.
Sure.
Now, as a leader, let's put them together and collaborate. Hey, your idea is great, and what you were talking about is absolutely wonderful. Now let's collaborate and come to a middle ground. That's the way I see it.
Idea?
Yeah.
Piece it together. Yeah. What do you say about that?
No, I agree with that. Something I wanted to piggyback or go back to on the agreement. Sometimes it is agreeing to disagree. So the agreement doesn't necessarily mean everybody thinks it's the best solution.
Sure.
It doesn't mean that it was their idea or not. So they might disagree on what the best opportunity is, but agree to terms of how we're going to move forward, which is what you just said. Right. But I think it's just important to mention that because sometimes I've seen people just leave it open because the 2 parties disagree. And even though everybody's calmed down, they just leave it unfinished.
Right.
So it is important, even if everybody doesn't see eye to eye, that you do agree to disagree, but agree on what the resolution is. Sure. It doesn't always look as neat and pretty as we would like.
And to your point, one of the things I was going to mention is don't ever leave that opportunity open.
Yes.
That way, it leads to contention, it leads to dissension, it leads to resentment. All those things that come into play because they're people and they have those feelings, and it's going to sit, it's going to marinate, it's going to stew, it's going to grow, it's going to fester, it's going to come in, it's going to get worse, and we do not want that. You don't want that for your team, you don't want that for family members. At any point in time, we will always want to come to a resolution. There are some people who are just so, unfortunately, pig-headed, so stubborn, that they are in their own way. And as leaders, we have to point that out to them in that opportunity.
Right.
You know what? You're not even being flexible. That's when that person definitely needs coaching and teaching and training to understand, to perceive things from both sides of the table. All right, closing thoughts, Yasmin, on our conflict resolution opportunity we spoke about today.
I would say focus on the specific point of view that the conflict is about, and don't generalize it, and then come to a resolution that is agreed upon by both the parties, actually all three.
Okay, good. You?
I would say when you have conflict and you come to a resolution, write it down, make sure it's clear. Maybe it's a follow-up email. So something that you can refer back to moving forward. Because 6 weeks from now, when it comes up again, everybody's not going to remember exactly what was said, and especially if it's not in their favor. It's not what they wanted to do. So make sure that you document it so that you can refer back to it and make sure you're able to move smoothly going forward.
Absolutely. Final thought for me is be really focused on laying this on top of the modality number 8, which is 6 strategies of execution, meaning that you learn how to do this in a more speedy fashion. You learn how to do it with more accuracy by listening and positioning the right points. You learn how to do this in the right timing. And timing is important and expedient. It might not be expedient at that time. Like Yasmin said, you may have to separate first, then come back. The timing is important. Then you learn how to do this with such power and authority. Those two are synonymous in that modality. Understanding that you, one, have the authority, but also you can have this be a powerful opportunity for them in order to make sure that they grow, as Yasmin was talking about. And then your opportunity is to guide them through this in a very clever, savvy way. Like Yasmin said, we'll put it, and I was saying as well, putting it upon them, letting them come up with the resolution, you're telling them and guiding them through the resolution even that you want. That's when that savviness comes into play. And then as you continue to do this, you make it look effortless. People come to you, especially when they have an issue, they'll be coming at you. You don't have to contextualize God to them. They'll come to you. Hey, you know what? Can we have a collaboration, talk about this? Here, we have some disagreement. And it may not be escalated, but they still come to you because they know that you are the strong mediator. You can make this thing happen with such finesse. All right, folks, thank you very much. I'm Grandison Shines. I'm here with
Yasmin Murray
and Al Gleason.
All right, folks, thank you very much for listening, and we will see you later on. All right, bye.